Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, October 26, 2022. We're here at Frederick School. I need a call to order and a roll call, please.
Weedman.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
Albert.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
And Miller.
Here.
Okay, that gives us quorum, so if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we have approval of the agenda. I'd like to make a little modification to the agenda for tonight, and that's move the recognition of the softball team up above the public comments so that they don't have to necessarily sit through everything else. So if I can get approval for the agenda.
So moved.
Seconded as amended.
Miller.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Albert.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
And it's okay. So next we have the recognition of the Grays Lake Middle School softball team.
Thank you, Mr. Weedman. Well, in a moment, I'm going to be introducing the principal of Grays Lake Middle School, Mr. Marcus Smith, to you. But before I do, I simply want to comment that over the past few years, we've had a lot of conversations and presentations about difficult topics. And we are just so thrilled to tonight be putting the focus where it belongs, which is on our students, and celebrating the wonderful accomplishments of our students. And that's what we're about tonight. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand this off to Mr. Smith. There's a mic right there. Mic is right there.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you to our school board. Appreciate it.
So let's push.
Should turn red.
There's a red button. Turn red. How's that? Okay, I'll start over. Thank you again to our school board for inviting us to a meeting tonight to celebrate our students. I have just a quick statement about our students here. One of the things that we do at the beginning of every season is we sit down with our coaches and talk about the priorities and the expectations for the year, and never once do we talk about wins and losses, and because that's not our priorities. You'll hear plenty about the success of this team, but one of the things that I would like to talk about is we talk about role modeling from our coaches about what good expectations are, what good sportsmanship looks like, how to treat people with respect, and make sure that that not only is role modeled from our coaches, but that we see that from our students, and we help them continue to be the good people that we expect. So I'm just here to congratulate you for a great season that came with a lot of success, both because you are good people like we expected you to be, but this team is also filled with a lot of great athletes. So without any further ado, I will bring our coaches up, Mrs. Julie Geisen and Ms. Cassie Johnson.
So we will try to keep our presentation very short, as we were told. We do have a little slide presentation just so that you guys can see pictures of our season. I wanted to say thank you first for coming to the board meeting, for the families, friends, players. I also wanted to thank the board for allowing us to come up here and
Can you go back to the first?
yeah, can you go to the first slide? And allowing us to come and celebrate with you. So our season was a really, really good season. We have 14 softball players. I'd like them to come on up. Be recognized. You can change the slide. You could change the slide. Okay, so this is, yeah, this is a picture of our actual win of the championship conference tournament. So we had 14 players, and we had Autumn, who plays pitcher and shortstop. She helped others learn more about the game of softball and was always very excited and pumped for every game and very enthusiastic.
Our next one was Reese. She mainly played shortstop and outfield. She brought a lot of positive intensity and energy to the game. She was always extremely determined whenever she was in the field or at bat.
Okay, we have Brenna. Brenna, raise your hand. Pitcher and second base. She was always having fun and enjoying the game. She's very dedicated to the game and always did whatever we asked her to do to fulfill anything we needed for the game.
Our next one was Ava. She mainly caught. She was always smiling and always kept all of us laughing, us as coaches included. She had a great sense of humor, which was always appreciated.
And then we have Grace. Grace is here tonight. Raise your hand. Okay, she's a pitcher and played first base. Always happy to play. Very gracious for every moment of the game and after the game. Always got back up no matter what happened to her.
Our next one was Kendall. She played outfield and first. Always strived to be the best player that she could. She was extremely hardworking and wanted to make sure she was always doing her best.
We had Sophia, our manager and outfield player, able to get into a few games that we played, and she learned and improved a lot every single day.
And then we have Cam, who is here. Cam played almost every position, I think, that we had throughout this season. Was always willing to do what was best for the team. She went above and beyond and was very much a team player, which is always appreciated.
And then we have Lila, who's here. She was a pitcher and a third base player. Always joking, keeping us in stitches. She kept everybody's spirits very high, and she's very caring about others on the team.
Then we had Trinity, who played outfield. Her playing skills improved a lot throughout this season. She was a great cheerleader and a great supporter when we had her, or when we had her at games. She's here still, just not here.
Addison played several positions throughout the season as well. She was a very strategic player, always thinking ahead to the next play, very consistent, always wanted to know what she could do to improve herself in the game.
Then we had Bella, who played outfield. She always put a lot of effort into playing her best and cared about her team's well-being, and she was always working hard to try to improve her skills.
Then we have Olivia. She played outfield. She always cared about everyone on the team and she always cared about what was best for the team as well. She's definitely a team player, great at taking tips and wanting to ask for tips of how she could improve her own game.
Then we had Eva. Eva played outfield and first a couple of times. Over the last 2 years, she's improved so much. It's awesome to see her dedication to the team. She works hard both at practice and outside of practice to gain any knowledge that she can to improve herself.
And that's our softball team. So after our slides, you can go ahead and go. That was our, these are just some of the slides so the girls can see. We took pictures at different games. You can go to the next slide. This was all of our teammates. Next slide. This was,
After our win, after?
well,
Before the win.
that was before the game started for the conference championship. They all huddled up. That's my favorite picture. And then putting the trophy in. We had an undefeated season, 11-0. We were conference champs. And one thing I want to say is softball is more than just about a bat, ball, and glove, or the matching bows and the crazy socks we had. Okay, it's about sportsmanship, hard work, determination, dedication, teamwork, and having a lot of fun. And then we always got dirty. Everybody was dirty. Some more pictures of practice. More pictures. More pictures. More pictures. And then here's some highlights for you. We had 4 home runs hit this year.
2 of them by Kendall.
Yeah, 2 by Kendall. Okay, 12 triples, 27 doubles, 74 singles, 138 total runs, 88 strikeouts by our pitchers. And then we were, like I said, we're undefeated and conference champs. And this is just one of the examples of sportsmanship our team had. They wanted to get together with the Plumby team because it was such a hard-fought victory. It was a nail-biter of a game. We went into 9 innings. The softball game is normally 7. And because we just won by 1 run, they wanted to all take a picture together. And I thought that was really great of them. And that's good sportsmanship, and really appreciate it. And we had a lot of fun. So thank you, girls.
Wait. Hold on.
Nobody told you to move yet. Hold on.
First, you gotta wait for me to get all the way around. I'll get my steps in here. So they had these made up for you. You put it on your wall, put it in your car when you wanna get over. There you go. Congratulations, girls. Good season.
No, wait, don't sit down because one of our board members just asked if she could ask you a question. So you gotta stand.
So I heard your coaches talk about all the ways that each of you contributed to your team. I'm wondering what you would say about your coaches. How did they contribute to your success?
Miss Dyson brought the socks and the bows. And Miss Johnson brought the attitude and the flair. Miss Dyson, she was always super sweet. She always knew exactly what to do at the right time. And she always just made me feel really special and encouraged to play. And same with Miss Johnson. Miss Johnson I love hanging out with, and she's just a really good classmate. They were Don't make me cry. They were both very supportive throughout the season, and that kept us all confident. Thank you all so much for being here.
And I think we want a photo op moment. Is that right? Did you get the pictures you needed? Out in the hallway? Okay, with parents. All right, and team and parents, you are welcome to stay for the rest of the board meeting. Also, no one would be unhappy with you if you had other things to do tonight. We all understand. All right, we'll take a moment.
Don't forget your. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next, we are up to public comments. Who do we have first? So push the silver button, make sure it's red.
Is it working now? Much better. First of all, wow, what a treat. I came to visit your district and got to see that wonderful celebration, so that's terrific. I am Lisa Yaffe. I am a board member for District 120, which is Mundelein High School, so I understand what goes into being a board member. Thank you for all that you do. I'm here just to briefly talk about the resolutions. I'm not sure if you've looked at your resolutions yet for the IASB conference coming up in just a few weeks now. And our district sponsored what is called resolution number 9, firearm dealer location. And we just are a little disappointed that the IASB, the committee did not support our resolution. So we're just trying to get out, especially to maybe some of our fellow communities here, and try to make a statement if in fact you guys think along the lines that we do. And that is that we believe that there's a law that already exists, the discussion about whether we should have a distance between a firearm dealer and a school, that's already been decided. The rule that already exists is, it's called the Public Safety Firearm Dealer License Certification Act, 430 Illinois 68. So that law exists. There's not a debate necessary on our part about whether it should exist or not. The question is, what is the distance that we should have between a public school and a firearm dealer? This is all managed through the certification process. Anyone who wants to sell firearms needs to go through the process of applying to the Illinois State, the Sheriff's Office? Illinois State Police, I'm not exactly sure. But they have to apply through that process. And any firearm dealer that is already located 500 feet or more, or 500 feet or less from the school district would have been grandfathered in if it had been before the rule took place in 2019. What we're asking is to expand it from 500 feet to 1,500 feet. We believe that students and teachers who are coming and going from school should feel like they're coming and going to a place of safety, and that there should be a reasonable buffer that will help them both feel more safe in actuality, but also from a psychological or mental health perspective, that there's a distance in their mind. So as I said, the rule already exists. We have asked that the IASB expand that range from 500 to 1,500. If they want to debate that in Springfield, whether it's 1,500 or some other number, that's up to them, but we are looking for them to expand it. So we hope that you will give that due consideration. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. Next, we have the tentative tax levy presentation.
Okay, this is the proposed 2022 tentative property tax levy presentation of Community Consolidated School District 46. I don't have the clicker, so I'm going to hear me say next slide a lot, so just get used to it. Next slide, please. The district's mission: empowering learners, creating equity, cultivating community. Next slide, please. So here is our finance goal from our strategic plan. This evening we'll be clarifying financial practices with transparency and board policy 4:20, which determines a board policy of 25 to 30%. Next slide, please. Here's the timetable of the tax levy process that was presented to the board on September 21st. This evening we have two important steps in the process. You as a board get to see the actual tentative levy extension that's in your board packets. And secondly, we approve the hearing as public notice is published to schedule the public hearing on November 16th. Next slide, please. So here are all our revenues taken from the recently approved budget. It's important to understand and remember that heavy reliance of local property taxes on our budget, 60%, with the second highest being state funding, which is mainly EBF. Next slide, please. Here are all our expenditures, totaling the top three. 75% of our budget goes towards people-related services. That's salaries, benefits of our staff, and purchase services such as student transportation, food service, and night cleaning for our buildings. Next slide, please. Okay, these are some of the key terms that go into the levy process. I just want to highlight them again. The tax levy itself is the amount of money a school district requests and is raised from the total property tax. We have the property tax extension limitation law, commonly referred to as the tax cap. That is Illinois School Code 35 ILCS 200/18. We have the extension, which is the total amount of taxes billed, including the growth in the levy, and that's limited by PTEL. We have the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, which is an inflationary indicator that measures the cost of a fixed basket of goods and services, including housing, electricity, food, and transportation. And then finally, we have the equalized assessed valuation, which is all the assessed taxable real estate in the district. Next slide, please. Okay, so PTEL limits the amount and increase from the lesser of 5% or the prior CPI. And so this is the first year we're actually going to be dealing with this, which is something which is very uncommon, as I'll show in a slide coming up. The PTEL limiting rate is different from the property tax rate, which is the levy divided by the equal assessed value. So the limiting rate is not your tax rate. They're two very different things, but even though they're related. And then finally, the levy amount is and the related tax extension are determined by the Lake County office after they've applied any PTEL limiting rates. Next slide, please. So these are the calculations. These are the actual inputs that go into the PTEL calculation. We have the equal assessed value of all property from 2021. We have the estimated EAV, which is a 7% increase. Those numbers are given to me by Lake County. We have the prior year extension, which I've included debt service. And we have our CPI. And the CPI is known from December of 2021 and is capped at 5%. And then we have an estimate of new property, which is 1.6 million, again, given to me by Lake County, and that was presented to you on September 21st. Next slide, please. Okay, really great slide here. Here is CPI history over the last 10 years. CPI is 7%, and is above both the 5 and the 10-year averages. And it's because we are living in a time of high inflation. Just so you know, the CPI for September is 8.2%. So the December 2022 CPI will be used for tax levy 23, and that's currently at 8.2. So don't be surprised if I'm bringing another 5% increase to you next year. Next slide, please. Here's our new property. And you can see estimate of 1.6 million is below the 5-year average of 2.4 million. As we all know, this is a residentially built up area already, so new property is quite within those kind of parameters of being 2.4 million. 1.6 is just below where we've been historically. Next slide, please. New slide for you. Love this one. You can tell you all love it too. This is Public Act 102-0895. I have to show you our disclosure of cash balance, mandating the annual disclosure of the school district's fund balance. And here is our unaudited fund balance, showing all funds. And another thing, we have $43 million of outstanding debt. Next slide, please. So why do we levy to PTEL? Why are we levying to the full 5%? Because we're a Tier 1 district. We talked about this a lot as a school district. We are currently at 66% adequacy as of the 2021 Illinois Report Card. ESSA is pandemic related and will be spent through September 30th of 2023. And we've done a lot of great things with that money, but it is non-recurring, and we will be completely finished with that by the end of the school year. And finally, we have capital needs beyond our operating levy. Our latest long-range plan over 15 years is $36.7 million. And we have the educational adequacy costs, which are not included in that, which were board approved at the last meeting. Next slide, please. So in summary, the levy request is 5.72 over last year's extension. It's actually 4.69 if you include debt service and CEDO, because they don't grow. The debt service is already mandated because that's our outstanding debt, and the CEDO IMRF portion is given to us from CEDO, so they don't grow. But everything else is growing, so it's a total increase of 4.69. What we're asking for is 40 million. What we believe we'll receive is 39.8. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'd like to invite questions from the board about the levy request as presented in your board packet.
Mr. Wildman, I think it's always helpful to summarize sort of the implications, the financial implications of not levying the full amount. Could you kind of talk about how that impacts the district's budget over time?
Yes. So historically, districts which have not levied to their PTEL limit have had the issue of use it or lose it was the phrase that they would, a lot of school districts would kind of say, if we don't levy right now, we can't. There is a look back of, I think, 3 years if you don't levy it, but if the levy increase passes out of that 3 years, it is lost. So school districts, which rely upon their levies, which most school districts do, it's not always in their best interest to do that. School districts which are not like us, and I can think of several in the area, Winnetka, I can think of other districts which have a completely opposite situation of us, they don't need to levy. What they can do is they can abate their taxes. We don't have the option to do that because we don't have that level of adequacy.
And Christy, just a reminder, about 10 years ago, prior to us getting on the board, the previous board did not go to the max levy, or did not go to levy what they could have levied, which kind of exacerbated some of our financial problems that we're facing today. I think at one time it was estimated about $25 million lost revenue for the district over a period of time. We've been able to kind of manage and try and dig as much as we can out of that hole, but that is part of, that exacerbates part of the financial problems that the district has had.
Yeah, it was the 2012 levy.
Yeah, I was going to raise that same point, that it's almost financial malpractice not to do it, for the reason that Jim just said. It's the compounded effect of the loss percentage over time. Yep. That, I mean, if you think about what we could have done with that money to help the students in our, I know, water under the bridge, I get it, but I was going to raise the same point.
Anybody else have any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we are up to board reports. Does anybody have anything to report out? Jessica?
I was able to attend the first parent question night for the Alice training, and I just want to say I appreciate the staff who were there and presented in a calm, matter-of-fact way. And then big kudos and appreciation to Dr. Diaz for her on-the-spot translation and recognizing the multilingual parents in the room. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Jason or Christy?
I'll echo Alice Parent Night. I went to the Park School, and there were some tough questions and some uncomfortable conversations, and I think the district leaders did a great job, so thank you for that. I didn't want to let that moment plus the events of Monday go by without saying this. Alice is necessary, but I felt sick during the parent night listening to how we're going to train 3- and 4-year-olds, and I'm sure all of our district leaders have that same back and forth feeling where you're trying to figure out the best thing to do, but you're also feeling a little sick inside that we have to have that conversation. And so I wanted to say that, you know, we know what the root causes are of school shootings, and they're not lack of training. And so it's necessary, but it's a Band-Aid on a wound. Doesn't really heal the wound. And so I just wanted to say this. There's a lot of research-based actions that we can take to prevent gun violence in schools that our district's already doing. Ensuring all doors can be locked, providing trauma-informed training like Alice. So I think we're doing a great job from a district perspective addressing these research-driven factors in school violence. But I also wanted to say that I think there's some things that we can do as a community also to address root causes. And I was reading the Everytown research report on school gun violence, which I encourage everyone to read. It's excellent, talks about root causes, talks about research, you know, around how to keep schools safe, et cetera. And two things that stood out that I just wanted to put out to our community, which is one, focusing a culture of safe gun ownership. It's legal to own a gun, so let's encourage gun owners in our community to secure their firearms out of the reach of children, which is the law in Illinois. But let's normalize those conversations. While setting up a play date, let's ask our fellow parents, is there a firearm in the home? Where is it stored? Is it locked? Let's disclose. Let's have that conversation and make it as normal as, does your child have a nut allergy? So that's one thing I think we can do, and I know Moms Demand Action has some training on that. that I know that the district is aware of and working on maybe bringing into the parent university. The second thing that stood out is that in Illinois, we have an extreme risk law that is vastly underused. So it basically allows law enforcement to take firearms away from someone who's at serious risk of harming themselves and others. It's a pretty intensive process, lots of due process, which is fair, but it's only been used 22 times since it was passed in the whole state since 2019. And so let's use our ALICE training. If we notice anything potentially unsafe in the community, each of us is empowered to say something so that law enforcement can get this process started. The last thing I want to say is, besides the trauma and experience of the teachers and children, Dr. Glickman, her leadership team, and our classroom teachers lost a day where we could have been moving our district forward, progressing toward our goals, and keeping our promise to our students. It's a day we'll never get back, and that's a disservice to our students. So I want to continue this conversation, not just about what the district can do, but about what we all can do. So thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
I would also like to add my thanks and support to the district and the leadership team for keeping us informed on Monday of the events at a time when I was away at my own school teaching and concerned about the welfare of friends, families, neighbors. The voice of calm that resonated with logical messages, letting us know what was going on, when it was going on, and not in an effort to panic the community, was appreciated. Not only for me as a teacher, but for my family that was dealing with some of those questions during the day. And I concur 100% with my colleague and her comments that she just made. On a different note, in terms of something I was able to do over the past month, I got an opportunity to see the first fall concert of the, I didn't get to see it in person, but I was bestowed with several videos from different angles. And I was in the process of parent-teacher conferences, and with technology today, I could still see everybody play live and recorded. It was fascinating. In between talking to parents of my own, and it was just wonderful. Just a really proud moment to be able to see that, and to think maybe 10 or 15 years ago I wouldn't be able to see anything because we wouldn't have these cameras all over the place. So I saw backwards angles and angles from the top of the bleachers and underneath the saxophones. I'm not sure how that one worked. All this kind of stuff. So congratulations to that group, because it was really a very, very nice concert, and I enjoyed it from afar.
Yeah, I'd like to just echo the work that you guys did on the other day with the situation in town and keeping everybody informed. I think it helped a lot of people kind of stay the course and do what we need to do. Christy?
So I'll echo my thanks for all of the communication. I know that takes time. Very much appreciated the updates throughout the day. Also, I wanted to, and on a different note, but related note, share the harvest from the community cafe, which I think is salient because the cafe was focused on places in our community, geographic and otherwise, where health has been sustained or improved. So I'm going to share this because, like you, I felt sick that we had to spend a whole day distracted from what our purpose is, which is to prepare kids for the future. So not that it wasn't a good response, but just that we had to do that. So in the cafe, some of the categories that we noticed as we transcribed all the Post-its were that health was improved and sustained in a bunch of areas in our community, and those might be really valuable to know for any parent who's watching or anyone who you might know. And those included areas where we could play. So local businesses were named, like the Gift of Games or Something's Brewing. People also noted places where we can exercise. So everything from Apex Fitness to the walking path near Frederick. Places where we can read. Our libraries came up often. Natural spaces like Rollins, Savannah, Lexington Woods, and Meadowview's Woodland came up as places where students and parents alike have healed. So, and we had people at the cafe who were not parents. So that was exciting to hear our spaces and our schools named. So that's an update on the harvest from the cafe. The next one is I've been looking into policy and wanted to just call your attention to the community engagement, the Connecting with Community policy that's been expanded. And I think it warrants a discussion if the rest of you are interested. It expands I won't go into the details now, but if I can send you a copy of the policy, but it provides an opportunity for us to have two-way conversations with our community, and it differentiates a two-way dialogue with a push where we push information out or pull information in. So thought we might want to discuss that perhaps at our November policy meeting. Staying with policy, I've been looking at the resource conservation policy and took a trip out to Boulder, Colorado. The Boulder Valley School District is a leader in sustainability, and Virginia Beach happened to be there too, and Virginia Beach School District is also a leader in sustainability and whole school sustainability. So in that, I talked with people from those school districts and got copies of their policies and sat with board members to learn about how those policies were developed. And then also, they pointed me to Ann Arbor's public school district, and they have a similar policy. And each policy is a different kind of policy, so I can send those to you. They vary in their flexibility, they vary in their ability to be implemented, and with how prescriptive they are. So I thought it might be useful to look at when we're considering the resource conservation policy. Last, I attended the Stronger Nonprofit Conference that was held at the Village Hall. And one of the sessions that I went to was about nonprofit board succession planning, and a tool which I have a copy of, and I will send you also. It includes a strategic needs assessment, a current board inventory, and other templates to help boards develop leadership succession plans. So I thought that might be something we could take a look at as we're looking at an election in the spring. So all of that you'll see in your inboxes, and that's my board report.
Okay, thank you. Tamika?
Thank you. Sorry about that. It's worth echoing. I know it's been said many times already, but it's worth just giving a big kudos to Dr. Glickman, the school administrators and staff, teachers, for the tremendous and collective effort put into making Monday as comforting and softening the blow to the best extent possible given the circumstances. And I will say that, you know, one of the things that really I'm really appreciative of, and my board colleague, Dr. Mack, kind of touched on the technology, just being able to kind of see and hear and not necessarily be physically present. You know, in this age of technology where information gets spread so quickly, true or not, it was very reassuring that we were getting regular, timely updates from our school superintendent, in addition to the principals at the school sending out their own emails. So, you know, I think in addition to everything that's also been said, it's worth noting just how attuned the district stayed on top of this and communicating, so that even though you can't necessarily completely mitigate the myths and the rumors, right? It's nice that it's a good to have when you know that right away there's fact-based information, right? As soon as it starts to simmer, that we're getting timely communication, solid communication that we can have confidence in, have assurance in while our kids are away from us. So thank you for that. And then the last thing I want to update the board on is I recently attended the National Black MBA Association Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the things that we've talked about as a board around equity and inclusion, not only in terms of curriculum, but also in terms of our hiring, right? Like making sure that we are identifying different sources to engage with diverse talent in the marketplace so that we can have a nice succession plan and pipeline for talent. And so I don't know that we currently are linked with any of those types of organizations intentionally, but where and when we have the opportunity as a district to lean into those, I think it's an awesome opportunity to just connect with diverse talent. And one of the things that was really exciting about it is that my organization specifically, not a plug for them, but I thought this was pretty remarkable. You're getting talent right as they are emerging into the workforce. We were able to conduct interviews on the spot, make job offers on the spot, so it really helps to differentiate an employer in the marketplace if you can tap into some of those types of conferences and events to kind of help meet your inclusive goals in terms of staffing. And that concludes my report, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. Next, we are up to superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Weedman. Well, many of you have commented about the events on Monday, so I'm not going to go into that in depth, but I did want to provide thanks to our staff and our community. Staff all day long were met with some changing circumstances, and they met all of that with flexibility and really without questions of why, right? They understood that we needed to make these changes to keep everyone safe, even when it meant that just right before someone's lunch period was starting, they learned that they were in soft lockdown and couldn't go out to lunch that day and they didn't have lunch in their school. So those kinds of things, people just rolled with those, and we're very understanding. We've gotten lots of positive feedback from our parent community, who understood that we had to do things like cancel a choral concert at GMS on Monday night, which nobody wanted to do, along with a sporting event. So those are difficult decisions to make, but our parents really did understand that, and we're grateful for it. I did want to comment, a couple of you mentioned losing a day on Monday, and I appreciate that thinking and those comments, but I also want to make sure you know learning absolutely continued on Monday. Our teachers continued with their lessons. They just had to modify some things, even down to at GMS for a while they weren't sending students to, weren't having children switch their classes. The teachers came and switched to the classes, so the learning still did continue. That does segue right into ALICE trainings that we had today and we'll have in some schools tomorrow. And I wanted to tell you that yesterday our leadership team met and talked about what happened on Monday and kind of what we learned from the experience and what next action steps would be. One of the conversations that we did have was whether we should continue as planned with ALICE training this week. We wanted just to explore how our students might be feeling about what they had been wondering about on Monday and whether this was the time. It was a very consensus decision that yes, this was still the time to do that training. And I'm going to share with you some response that I got from a school in a moment, but people felt very strongly that this training was going to help our students to feel empowered. But I wanted you to know that we talked about it before we went ahead and moved forward. And that brings me to sharing with you, I'm going to just read a part of an email that Eric Detweiler, the principal at Frederick, sent to his staff today. This was after they had completed their ALICE training today. So this is most of what he wrote. Frederick staff, James, Christina, that's our new dean there, and I got around to most classes this morning. Let me tell you, teachers, you were amazing. What I observed was teachers talking to students at their level, explaining a very difficult topic in an appropriate way, answering questions in a straightforward manner. We had no parents opt out their children from the lesson, and we had no students that I heard about panicking or being inappropriate during ALICE training. The community has been very supportive of us conducting this lesson, even after the start we had for this week. They are also very confident in all of your teaching abilities to deliver this tough lesson in a safe and appropriate manner. Thank you again for all that you do. We are rated by the state on our assessment scores, and while those are important, there is so much more that you are tasked with, and I believe parents in the community are very appreciative of all that you do. Have a great day, and please reach out if you have any questions from this morning or if students had questions that you could not answer. Wanted you to hear that. Now, that came from Mr. Detweiler, and it's a perfect segue into something that Dr. Woke is going to share.
Thank you, Dr. Glickman. I was going to say I get to talk about one of my colleagues here and celebrate him. He was here earlier, but unfortunately he did have to leave before we got to this point in the meeting. But I wanted to share that a few months ago we honored Mr. Detweiler, who was presented with the Illinois Principal Association's Lake Region Herman Graves Award here at one of our board meetings. This was the regional award for the highest honor bestowed by the Illinois Principals Association. I am pleased to share that earlier this month at the Illinois Principals Association's annual conference, Mr. Detweiler was awarded the state-level Herman Graves Award. The Herman Graves Award is awarded to a building leader who demonstrates positive impact on education and advocacy for children, is an advocate or spokesperson for the Illinois Principals Association, promotes the IPA membership, and serves on IPA at the state and regional levels. So kudos to Mr. Detweiler. We all knew he was great, and now he's been recognized at the state level as well.
Thank you, Dr. Woke. And finally, board, I don't know, depending on when you came in this evening, I don't know if you walked through a group of parents that were in the media center. That, if you saw them, that is the new GMS and Frederick PTO. And I think we talked about it very briefly at one of our board meetings here. I think I may have announced that they were starting it, but it was really powerful to walk and see those folks together, and I stopped and talked with them for a moment. This is new for our school district, and as a reminder, what schools often find at this grade level, at 5, 6, 7, 8, is it can be really hard to create a PTO. First of all, 2 years is a hard way to have a PTO. You're either on your way in as a parent or you're on your way out. Also, let's just put it this way, children have varying interests in having their parents involved in school, right? So it's really easy for a parent to say, okay, you don't want me to be doing it, that's fine, it's only a 2-year school. We put Frederick and GMS together as a 4-year PTO. And the group of folks that were out there today is kind of our first batch of parents leading the way. I wanted to share that I was recently at a conference and talking just off the cuff with some superintendents and mentioning that we have this, and they were really impressed and thought, oh, that's something we need to do in our district. So we are leading the way. I kind of set those folks up, letting them know that they were a guiding light. That made them all nervous. That wasn't the intent. But we're really, really excited. So wanted to share that, and that ends the superintendent report tonight.
Thank you. Next, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. All right, page 2, action items. I need a motion to approve the resolution of the proposed 2022 tentative tax levy and schedule the public hearing on the 2022 tax levy and issue a notification to the public.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Weedman,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
and Albert.
Aye.
Okay. Next is a motion to approve the Wold Architectural Services proposal for the Prairie View School roof replacements.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions on that one? Good. Okay.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Okay. We have no unfinished business. Or do we? Yeah. Now we have new business, and the first is the discussion of the IASB resolutions, being led by Ms. Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Wheatman. Do we have the presentation? We don't.
I don't think I knew that
All right, thank you. All right. While our technology catches up with us, I just want to thank my colleagues here on the board. I know that I sent out a pre-read, so I appreciate you all doing your homework in advance. Got some good questions that came up in advance, and I think our colleague from across the way in Mundelein, Ms. Lisa, kind of set the stage for us to review this tonight. So first, I just want to start off by saying that the process of reviewing the resolution committee report, just to kind of level set, because I recognize we have some new board members, the activity of doing this annual review is an opportunity for the Community Consolidated School District to leverage our collective voice around recommendations and proposals for policies for IASB, Illinois Association of School Boards, to advocate and look to legislate on our behalf in Springfield. So this really helps to position us well to make sure that we're showing up. Although we all have individual perspectives as we're going through the resolutions and contents here, when it is time to vote, we are voting as a unified single board on the topics that are up for approval. You ready? All right, I'll keep going. There we go. Okay, we can advance to slide 2. And just at a high level, this is highlighting for us the topics that will be voted on in this upcoming delegate assembly on Saturday, November 19th. And so there's the election of IASB officers, approval of constitutional amendments, voting on new resolution and amended existing resolutions, adoption of IASB position statements. I did want to make sure that everyone was aware that there is a new vendor and they have a new simplified process for voting. So for those of you who have served in the past, you now just have a nice little clicker. I'm looking forward to just being able to use the clicker. Get a souvenir paddle. They may be auctioning those off. But it does allow for efficiencies in the voting process as the votes are casted and counted immediately. So that is a nice new way to leverage technology. And then for those of you who are interested, although I am the delegate representing our district at the Delegate Assembly this year, there are learning opportunities coming up on November 3rd and 18th, if I can read my small little font here on my screen, if you're interested in just learning more. So I say that as a hint for others that may be thinking about being a delegate in the future. It's a great way just to learn, and then as I am going through the process this year, more than willing to avail myself to questions as you embrace learning. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so this year you would have seen in the resolution committee report sent out to you guys that there are 3 constitutional amendments, 3 new resolutions, 5 amended existing resolutions, and 8 that were identified as do not present. So just to level set, per the IASB Constitution that's been approved by the IASB Board of Directors, the resolution committee has the authority to recommend do not adopt, do adopt, do not adopt, or do not present a resolution. So the resolutions that are here highlighted as do not present are there just for informational awareness only. We will not be taking any action on those items. And we will get started.
Mrs. Nash,
Yes.
the do not present, the criteria for do not present was because those were previous questions that were rejected over a number of years, right? That's why they're saying, hey, just so you know, these were questions in the past, unsuccessful. We're just letting you know that these are not, they've been asked of us again, but we're saying we're not going to present them.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And similarly with the position statements, when we get to that area of the deck, there are position statements that have already, been asked and answered in the past, and so the rationale, they just include the rationale for why they're not addressing it. It's either covered under another statement somewhere, or it's been asked, answered, and we're not taking that position. That's a good reminder that belief statements, so you may recall that IASB used to have belief statements. They have since pivoted to IASB core values. So you will no longer hear the language around belief statements, but more so around the core values of the IASB. Okay.
Can I add another process learning from last year that I didn't understand? And so just to be clear, the ones that the resolution committee recommends do not adopt, there's not a vote on those unless it's appealed. The decision to not adopt is appealed. So we may, if there are any that they've recommended do not adopt that we have decided we would be in favor of, we have to make an appeal in the room for it to come for a vote. So just something that did not hit me last year. So
that's why you are an awesome
That is a great alternate. I waited for 45 minutes for the technology to work.
So thank you for that, Mrs. Braden. To help us just have really ease of use in going through this process, I have color-coded the new resolutions and amended existing resolutions. So if they are in green, that means that the committee is recommending that we do adopt. If it's in red, they are recommending that we do not adopt. Okay. All right. So although as part of the resolution committee report, it didn't call for specific, to me it was very unclear whether or not there was going to be anything to happen with the constitutional amendments or not. So I want to err on the side of caution and just go through those if we can. All right. So if we start with the first constitutional amendment, and it's found on page 11 in the resolution committee report. Essentially, it's saying it's under section 4, elections. Term of office shall be 2 years and serve no more than one term or until qualified successor is elected. So essentially, the language is changing. Instead of it being the officer serving 1 year with no more than 2, they just flip-flopped it. Okay. Just to clarify too, this is for the purposes of our discussion. We're not taking any action on these this evening. So if you have questions as we go along, this is the kind of time to, get them out and think through. So when we get to our next board meeting, we'll be actually, taking vote. Okay. All right. The next constitutional amendment under resolutions, delegate assembly can determine whether proposals are submitted as a position statement only. Belief statements are being replaced by IASB core values, so that kind of speaks for itself. And then the other one under 9 for resolutions is it's removing the 8-day calendar requirement to have a written appeal before the annual meeting. A meeting is not required and does not require a 2/3 vote consideration. So the original language had that requirement in there, and if you look at page 11 going into 12, it's essentially just striking that requirement out altogether. Okay. Are there any questions about the constitutional amendments?
So just to clarify, that last one was to the point that I had raised earlier, which now you can raise an appeal in the room. You don't have to decide beforehand. So that's helpful, actually. Although it might make for a longer meeting.
Perhaps, but at least the voting will go faster. Okay. All right. So if we are looking now, moving over to new resolutions, and again, there were three. The first one is around fund balances, the Miller ratio adjustment, looking to increase it from 2 to 3, which will allow districts to maintain a healthier fund balance without fear of being sued for excessive accumulations. And so I think we hear a lot about this from our CSBO here around just the need to make sure we're maintaining healthy fund balances. There are some districts that believe they are challenged in being able to maintain healthy fund balances while adhering to the Miller ratio of 2. Okay. Any questions with regards to the fund balance Miller ratio adjustment recommendation to adopt? No? Okay. Very good.
Could we maybe in between meetings, I don't know that I've run into the Miller ratio before. I know what our policy says, so I don't know if there's a quick explainer or something that Mr. Wildman could send over to us.
Mr. Wildman, I hate to put you on the spot. Do you?
If
Sure.
it's,
No, I
if
can-
it's
I
something
can-
you'd rather just send us, that's fine.
It basically means that you can't have more than 2 or 3 times your accumulated expenditures from that year. So school districts which have accumulated very large fund balances in their life safety but haven't acted on their life safety, plaintiffs can bring an actual suit against the district and say, I want my tax back because you haven't spent it. And so they put that suit against the district. It usually is a straight calculation, and then the taxpayers who've overpaid because they haven't spent the money on what it should have been spent, accumulated by Miller ratio, get their money back. So the district loses its money.
Okay. I hear you saying that this is a situation that our district does not find itself in.
Less so here.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Ms. Miller, you look like you have a question.
My question, I think, has been answered, so we're good.
Okay. All right. The next new resolution that IASB is recommending that we do not adopt is the alternative funded school bus funding. So the essence of it is to advocate state and federal government to fund school districts transitioning to zero or low emission buses when a district can demonstrate buses are not practical. So if we flip over to the committee report, and I'm used to working with like 3 screens in my work, so managing all of this off of one screen while trying to be green conscious and not kill a bunch of trees is killing me. But the essence here is, you have it? Oh, you are amazing. Thank you. I got it, okay. All right, so the essence here is essentially saying like, you know, school districts are encouraged to look at, you know, going green and using electric vehicles, but, you know, where's the money, essentially, where's the money coming from for it? And they're saying that, you know, hey, we're not in a position to afford this, and so, you know, are we going to be in a position then to get some resources, some funding to help districts be able to transition to zero emission or low emission buses? And so the committee said that they don't think that this is practical to be able to do. So I'll read the rationale for the do not adopt. All right, so the committee was concerned that the current transportation reimbursement formula does not fully support the reimbursement costs and question how the funds would be found or diverted for a new program. And they do recognize that financial support in this endeavor would mean funding not only the cost of new buses, but also the cost of the charging infrastructure. Consideration regarding the challenges of rural and urban settings was also discussed, giving notice that analysis would need to be sought to ensure funds were sufficient to support all types of school district transportation needs. So it's bigger than just ensuring the transition to the buses, right? But there's a whole infrastructure that needs to be put in place to do that, in addition to just understanding the distribution of funds and how that would be allocated. So they recommend do not adopt. Questions?
Tamika, I would be curious, sorry, Mrs. Nash, I would be curious to see if there had been any conversation about whether passing this resolution would encourage the creation of the infrastructure. Normally, I absolutely respect what the committee recommends, but climate change has some urgency to it. And I think the part of this that struck me the most is the idea that this resolution would allow districts that can make the case for zero emissions budgets, that those are not feasible, that they could apply for funding for low emission buses. And they've cited quite a number of problems that diesel emissions cause for student health and student cognition. So for me, I'm wondering if, again, if this might be an instance where we might consider voting no, but I would want to know more about whether it could, in the process, could passing the amendment push the creation of the infrastructure and give people at least some financial support to reduce the negative impacts of diesel emissions on kids.
So what I hear you saying then is consider voting yes for this to help push the conversation in the direction so that the infrastructure can be created. Because if we vote no, that would be in line with what ISB is suggesting.
I'm wondering if it's worth a discussion.
Okay.
And I'm also asking, I guess, and maybe some prior delegates know, can resolutions drive the creation of infrastructure? Is that an assumption we could
I mean,
challenge?
they're not legislation, right? So they're resolutions, but they're not legislation. So they provide input to the legislature, but they don't, I don't think they constrain the actual legislation in any way. They're meant as input to legislators, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So in other words, it's not like the law has to be created as written in this recommendation, to your point.
So it could inform legislators that work, but this is wanted.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And in that case could drive.
That's
It
my
might not,
understanding.
but
Yeah,
could.
yeah.
Okay.
If legislators look at this list and say, oh, this is a priority, I think that's, a start of a conversation for sure.
Okay.
In addition to, if enough school boards, vote yes, even though the committee, the resolution committee is recommending no, that's another driver to that point.
It has to be appealed in the room. So that's the one, because they've said there's not going to be a vote unless someone registers an appeal. So that's something we'd have to decide. Do we want to be the ones who register the appeal in the room at the next meeting? Something to think about.
Yeah. Ms. Albert?
Thanks for being able to tell I had a question. If it's to encourage the creation of legislation, I guess what I don't understand is why can't the legislators try to come up with ideas to provide the funding? Maybe that's a rhetorical question. So I guess I'm in line with what has been said already, that if we can encourage that thinking, I would like to go ahead and do so.
Okay.
Another thing, I had a pretty lengthy conversation about electric vehicles, and honestly, I'm wanting to be careful, more careful than I've been, at least, in thinking about the transition to electric vehicles, because of something I wasn't aware of but I've learned is that in order to create electric vehicles, mining has to happen and is primarily happening in South America. That is very damaging to the people who live there, both physically to the land, but also to their health. And is, given our district's stance on equity, I think that that extends beyond just our kids, but also to globally. So we might want to think about really promoting the idea of low emissions as we transition in this time of history where we're trying to reduce emissions. How does equity play into that? And then do we want to support the idea of low emissions and encourage the financing of it? So
Versus zero.
Yeah.
versus zero, right?
So one option might be to contact Naperville, who's the one who put this amendment forward, and think about what something like that might look like for next year and put it forward.
Okay, good deal. The next and last new resolution being proposed, so our colleague from Mundelein spoke to this earlier during public comment, is the firearm dealer location. So looking to basically increase the distance from where a gun store, to include firearm selling stores, need to be from a school or any child care facility is what the proposal indicates. So from 500 feet to 1,500 feet. Currently, the Resolutions Committee is recommending do not adopt because they believe that a different statement and type of advertising around, let me just read it verbatim. They thought a different statement about firearm advertising might be more impactful than increasing the radius for firearm dealers. So when they say a different statement, that's really not expanded upon. My thinking is like similar to those stickers that we see in the windows, that they may do something in terms of just like demarcation, like signage, if you will, signage and stickers. But they are not suggesting or recommending that we adopt the increase to 1,500 feet at this time. Questions? Ms. Albert?
I don't really have a question. I guess I have a comment. I played around on Google Earth and just looked at, okay, if I'm at Meadowview School, how far away is 500 feet? How far away is 1,500 feet? 500 feet seems awfully close. Adding 1,000 is not that much more, but it's something. And I think psychologically, it sends the message that we as a community value the mental health of our teens and children and staff. If it's a law that already exists, and it doesn't seem like it would take that long for the legislators to change this law. It's not as hard as the other one where they have to come up with funding.
So I think on this side of the conversation, on the pro side of the conversation, it's another 1,000 feet. The con side of the conversation is I already have my establishment here. Am I to just pick up and go? And then where to? Like, I haven't seen any analysis around like how many entities would be impacted by this decision, and I don't know that in terms of like Grays Lake, I don't think we have any gun stores. I don't know that I've seen any. But that being said, like, then are you displacing business owners and community is potentially, I could see as another con. So just trying to balance the conversation. Mr. LaCroix?
I think that was one of the points that our guest was trying to make today when she noted that when the law was first enacted, that anyone who was already inside that 500-foot zone was grandfathered in.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was trying to make the point, like, this expanded radius, I don't know that she used those same, I don't know if she took us to point C on the idea, but rather I think she was trying to get across that we would also similarly expect that expanded radius would also include a grandfathering. That's what I understood anyway.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
So it,
That wasn't clear to me, but thank you. That's good, good thought.
I think I would add that this feels a little bit like mission drift, because it feels like this should be zoning is where these decisions are best made. And not that I want guns anywhere near our schools. I don't want even 1,000 feet from our schools, but it may be, there may be some unintended consequences in regulating which businesses can be by schools, and it seems like this is a zoning municipal, that's their arena, and perhaps it would be, we might be acting blindly if we passed it. Just wondering what precedent it sets and what other businesses may not be allowed, so.
Good point. Others? Good, okay. All right, so now we will move on to the amended existing resolutions. And there are 5. The first is the Capital Grant Fund for school buildings. So this is the annual allocation of funds to address shortage of classroom space and maintenance. Funding shall be dispersed based on 1% fully funded. Should be based on 1. So 4 points of criteria: 1% of fully funded, 2, the district's borrowing capacity, 3, the district's EAV per pupil, and 4, the age of existing buildings. The resolution committee is recommending that we do adopt this. And the rationale are, very similar to some of the other rationale that we've seen around just capital needs of the schools, and to make sure that there's appropriate funding for our school buildings, school construction, and ongoing appropriation.
So is this in essence sort of using EBF to create equity at the capital funding level as well? Is that how we're reading it?
Can you ask that question again, Ms.
Yeah.
Brandon?
I'm sorry, we're trying to get the slides in the right place.
I'm just not looking.
We're not doing good.
I'm just not looking. My reading of this is that it puts some EBF calculations into the capital grants that weren't there before to create more equity. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry to my tech partner over there. I should have let you know. I'm on slide 3. We'll be on slide 3 until we get to the 3rd item on amended existing resolution. Then we'll hop over to 4, where they continue. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. Okay, the next amended existing resolution is School Safety Fund. So this one is looking for IASB to advocate for funding at federal and state level to support comprehensive school security enhancements, prioritizing geography in Tier 1, Tier 2 districts, and support establishing best practices for continuous improvement. So this amendment is really just highlighting the need for this advocacy to take place at the federal level too, because previously it was just at the state. Right. Any questions, comments? Okay.
I want to just jump in and say I love the flexibility of this. I believe it mentions that schools can take a look at the built infrastructure and how that not only prevents violence but generates peace. We know that when spaces are organized in communities in a way that people have, kids in particular on playgrounds, have multiple ways of engaging with one another, that is a peace building, peace generating intervention, if you want to call it that. So I love that this resolution includes infrastructure and security. And I'm all for more federal funding for education, wherever it comes from. So
that's right. That's right. Okay. And that was a recommended do adopt. The next one is a recommend do not adopt, and this is really kind of getting around bipartisanship. It's the involvement with candidates for public office. So, legislation, position, support versus candidate. So they want to change the language to encourage the evaluation of legislative positions relative to the public education as they affect the principles of school management. So essentially the language is looking to remove support of candidates out of the existing language. So right now it says candidate legislation position support, and it'll just say legislation position support. With the rationale that ISB, they shouldn't be involved in evaluating like legislative positions of individuals. Like that should be something that's bipartisan, that they shouldn't be, you know, kind of advocating or supporting, if you will, a candidate. Dr. Mack? Okay. I saw like the very long blink, like, what? All right. Okay. So, and think back to the aims of ISB, right? It's to advocate on the collective whole, not for any one particular candidate. So it's on the whole of all of the school boards.
Well, interestingly, they're saying do not adopt this change, so they want the language to remain that they will evaluate individual candidates, right?
Yeah, well,
The school district says, let's take that,
Yeah, they're
language
saying,
away
right.
and just say, let's evaluate
Right.
legislative positions.
Right,
And
they're saying do not
ISB
adopt
committee is
this.
saying, no, let's evaluate candidates.
Mhm.
Interesting.
So it's a do not adopt, and we could all speculate as to why it's a do not adopt, but I won't. All right, we are on to slide 4, where the amended existing resolutions continue. So the fourth one is mandates review committee. So it's recommended that a committee be creating a committee to expand knowledge of and review current, newly proposed, and the process for for future educational mandates which are subject to a sunset provision in effort to reduce mandate burdens. So as all the mandates come forward on an annual basis, this really allows for a committee to come together and kind of streamline this process for everybody. So we're not all sitting here going through, you know, I think it was like 50 pages of the resolution committee report, but they would essentially be put in place to kind of streamline and create efficiencies around how we are able to digest all of the recommendations that are coming out of the resolution committee.
This is specifically one of the core purposes of EdRed is to really be on the watch out for unfunded mandates. And so, you know, this is one that EdRed is has been behind quite a bit, because that is, you know, you notice that all these other recommendations are about funding. And EdRed would, you know, we would all prefer that it really stay that way. So, yeah. But in the past, they have not been, and that's been an issue, because then you got to squeeze it into your budget and deprioritize other things you had planned. So,
yes. All right, we good? Okay. All right, and then the last amended resolution is a recommendation to do adopt financial contributions for school board elections. So renaming from election schedules to school board election nonpartisanship. And this is to prevent school board candidates from soliciting, accepting, or receiving a donation or financial contribution from special interest groups, PACs, etc. I think we can all get around that again, we are supposed to be nonpartisan and we are representing the community and the district as a whole, irrespective of, someone else's individual interest. Okay. Questions or comments? Okay. All right. The others, again, are do not present, but they are included here for your awareness. If we jump to slide 6, these are deleted and amended position statements, and they, again, are here for your awareness only. The board does not need to take action. At our next board meeting, we will take a vote on the resolutions that have been brought forward, and you can leverage, if we advance to slide 9, you can use that little template there, handy dandy template, to indicate your vote. So CA, constitutional amendment, NR, new resolution, AER, amended existing resolution, in order as presented. And then there's a nice little notes page on the next slide. If you would like to take some notes as it pertains to your thoughts around a particular action that you'd like to see us taking. It sounds like we for sure have one around the bus, going from electric buses, going to electric buses, right? And maybe we want to consider appealing that on the floor at the delegate assembly meeting, all right? And then next and last slide is just thank you all for your engagement and attention this evening, and I look forward to us having a nice solid vote during our next board meeting, and I'm sure that will be on the agenda that Mrs. Dr. Glickman and our board president puts together. So thank you guys. Mine is not having another screen.
Okay, next is discussion of food service options for fiscal year 23-24. Let's see if we keep this presentation on track.
Okay, so a couple of things in your board packet. Put together a memo, so hope you've read it, because there's going to be a lot of information I'm going to be referencing about legislation and some of the good things which are happening, but we do need a decision. We do need some direction from you to move forward on some things this evening. So, food service options for next school year. This evening, the new business, the administration is seeking input from you for our food service for next year. Next slide, please. So the mission, food is what powers our learners. And I think we can all agree that probably the biggest thing about food equity is that we have good food that all our kids can enjoy and that's affordable. So that's why it ties back to the mission. Next slide, please. Okay, the financial strategic plan goal. There will be some future financial implications based on the decision, the direction that I'll hopefully be getting from you this evening. I cannot quantify those for you today, but I just want you to be aware that there will be something that we have to think about in the future. And so as you go through the full slides, hopefully that will become clear. Next slide, please. So, I'm going to talk to you about Illinois Public Act 102-1101. This is a new law that created a new opportunity for schools to be able to address some of the issues that have been identified with old procurement laws surrounding and governing awarding of food service contracts. So the new act gives districts a choice in how they wish to award a food service contract. In the past, it had to be awarded through an IFB, which is an invitation to bid. This had to be the lowest bid. Now, as you can guess, the lowest bid criteria had a certain impact on food quality and other considerations that a school district may have. Next slide, please. So rather than defaulting to a competition based on price, school districts will have the freedom to source a program based on the needs and wants of the district through an RFP. That's a request for proposal. Provided good faith effort is provided on behalf of the district to give preference to contracts, and it lists all the different things. I'm going to go through them so we can take our time. Focus on the health and well-being of students, promoting the production of scratch-made, minimally processed foods, give preference to state regional suppliers sourcing local food products, give preference to food suppliers that utilize hormone and pest management practices that we may have preference to, and increase opportunities for businesses operated by minorities, women, or persons with disability. So I'm going to stop there and state how many CSBO's business managers, superintendents have been working for many years to make this law come to fruition. And we're all very excited that it's passed into law. It's going to be a win for our students. Next slide, please. Some further information. As you know, we are in the 6th year of a 5-year contract that was extended by emergency waivers, allowable because of the global pandemic and effect upon food service in public schools, where all food was free to our students. That was last year and part of the previous year. The state has contacted all the school districts that are in their 5th, 6th, or sometimes 7th years of standard contracts, asking them for a choice for the upcoming school year. We've been given 4 choices, so I'm just going to walk through them with you. Option 1, a non-competitive procurement in which the SFA, that's us, can work with our current or new company on a fixed price per meal contract based on current market and local needs. That means the state has given us the option to negotiate directly with ARBA, our current food service provider, for the upcoming school year. And that will be based on current and local needs, market needs. So that's option 1. We continue with ARBA. We do not do a procurement process. Option 2 is the formal solicitation for the IFB. That's the old way. So that would be the lowest bid, IFB. And then they've given us options 3 and 4, which are the 2 different types of the request for proposal. The first one is continue with the formal solicitation process through a request for proposal, which is called a fixed price per meal. So it's kind of a hybrid of the fixed cost per meal, but it includes some of the criteria I talked about. And no, you can go, that's fine. You can go to the next slide. And then the 4th one is an RFP, but it's cost reimbursable, which is kind of another different option. Okay. So here are some of the differences. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the main points, again, that the RFP gives autonomy under the new law and flexibility. The old bid process, which is lowest bid, is the winning vendor. Next slide, please. So, what are we going to do? ISB's recognized the challenges school districts face during this unprecedented time. They understand that school districts have a very difficult decision to make. The template that school districts would use for options 3 and 4, that's the RFP, which I think we're all really excited about, is currently not available. And the state acknowledges this. Bids for school service pre-pandemic would normally be available for vendors in November. So in the pre-pandemic world, the bid packet would have been produced. It would have been available to vendors in the next 2 to 3 weeks for them to respond to it, us to do a process in December and January and to appoint a new vendor if possible. We don't have that RFP packet available to be able to do that today. And the state has given no date for this to be ready either, which is also very important. In addition, any process that the school district selects will require them to show 5 years of meal counts. So a usual bid packet under the old RFB, you would show all your data about what you've served over the last 5 years, and that would allow vendors to be able to come in and make a good choice about what they were going to bid on in terms of a meal count for you to be able to, quote, pick the lowest bid. That's not currently available because the last 2 years we don't have reliable data. And that's because, number one, we've given free food away, and that's not something that's a reliable meal count. So essentially we have 1 year to base our how we're going to go forward in those specifications, because this is the first year that we've got pre-pandemic and not giving all our food away for free. ISB recognizes all these considerations. They've been the business managers and the superintendents have stated to them that this is problematic. They also recognize that the intense market instability of the K-12 food sector, of how many companies are going to be able to answer these bids all being hit in the market at the same time. So our current food service provider, the group we'll currently be with, ARBA, has 27 school districts that need to make a decision for next year. 13 of them have already filed the waiver, option 1, to renegotiate next year with ARBA. The other 13, so we're the 27th, have already told them that they are strongly leaning towards option 1. So we're the only one who's not given them a decision yet of the 27. I do not have all the state data of all the different school districts. The only thing I have is the anecdotal data of those 27 that we're currently with, who are under the National School Lunch Program. I can tell you that there is a peer-to-peer. It's a platform in which business managers are able to talk to each other, and a lot of other school districts anecdotally is saying that they're going to also be filing the waiver with their different food service companies outside of ARBA. So, the state has made it very clear that option 1 will be honored. So if we do file it, it will be considered a waiver for the following year. Next slide, please. So based on the culmination of where we're at, that we think that the RFP is a fantastic opportunity going forward, we don't think the time is right for us. So our recommendation this evening is to follow the other school district's leads and wait for another year. We feel that this is the lowest risk to our food service program and our students. We will use this year to assess all the options, and in early 2023, bring back a more thorough, robust discussion item for all the board members, and we'll be able to have more reliable data on our food service. We look forward to hopefully diminished effects of the pandemic disruption and able to make a decision with more school districts based on emerging best practice. So in combination, we want the best food for CCSD 46 and our students. We feel that this is best accomplished by working again with ARBA for another year and planning for the RFP process in 2024-25.
Does anybody have any questions for him? Concerns about the process? Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Wildman. So this 1-year delay in moving to what we otherwise would have chosen as our process, is there a risk that we would get a worse price because we're only negotiating this for a year? I know that pretty much everyone else that Arbor is working with is doing the same 1 year, but isn't it true we would have gotten some sort of a discount for a multi-year agreement that we're not going to get this time? Is there any consideration to that in this decision?
I can't tell you who we're going to get to respond for the RFP. I can tell you that one of the things that will hopefully be something as a byproduct of that more companies may respond to the RFP because of the less restrictions, and we might have more businesses, food service vendors who were not attracted to the National School Lunch Program lowest bid. So there might be more coming in the future. I can't tell you if that would happen in a hypothetical example compared to just us renegotiating next year. I don't know. But I'm hopeful. I think that's why a lot of us are hopeful about the RFP process, because it will give us more flexibility to be able to negotiate on things which are more important to us.
And then options 3 and 4, fixed price per meal or cost reimbursable. The difference between those two, is it have to do with how we price our meal to our students? Is there a risk shift?
There would be. The main difference between those two is that one is determined on a management fee, which is the second one, not the meal one. The other one, which is basically we would be giving a set amount of money which is pre-negotiated at the time of the specifications as part of the RFP award, that is also a risk to us, because we could be overpaying or underpaying based on how the performance of our food service. So there's always going to be a risk that, because as the RFP moves further away from lowest bid, we could see increased prices because there's more scope. There's more scope that's involved with the actual vendor. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be paying less for our food. It just means we're getting what we want. So I think that's the main thing you have to think about. The RFP gives us what we want from our food service, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be cheaper.
And that's clearly a question for next time. I
Yes.
agree with your recommendation, and I support it, but I was just curious about that as we get into further discussions about those other options.
I think
Thank
we're all
you.
very hopeful that it would translate to something like that.
Anybody else on this side of the table?
I'm just wondering how much confidence you have that a year would be enough to redefine the process. And just as context, I'm leaning towards supporting this also, but are we looking at 1 year delay, do you think, before we can create more healthful nutrition for our students? Or do you think it's going to be longer than a year?
I hope it's a year. I don't want to be bringing this back to next year. So let me put it that way. That's not my intent at all. My intent is to have as much time for us to be able to make an assessment about what we want from our food program. So as much as possible, I would love to say to you that 1 year is the exact amount of time. I can't say that, but I'm very hopeful that and I truly want to bring this to an RFP next year.
I just wanted to add in, Chris, I appreciated that you talked about how CSBOs and superintendents are excited about the law, and I just wanted to add in, the two of us have had quite a few conversations about this, and you know, we're frustrated and sad. Honestly, this is, you know, I support Chris's recommendation. Neither of us are happy that he's making this recommendation to you. We just feel like it's the safest, best thing to do at this time. And I think the fact that the law has been created is a step in the right direction. It just didn't come along with all of the things that needed to make it move forward in a timely way.
I also would hope that there be some districts that do the RFP. You know, if they feel like that they were ready for that, that would be great. And then we have some kind of case law. We have somebody to kind of base it on. I don't know any of those districts. I wish I did. I wish I could call them and say, come on, I'm rooting for you to go for this, because we're not. You know, jump first and I'll follow you next year. It's a great idea.
You might need to cast the world's worst social network net a little bit bigger.
Yes, absolutely.
This isn't a question, but I'm wondering if this is a space where we could invite our community to help us do our own research in the next year, because everyone has opinions about food. It's just a really easy way to engage our community in a consultative way where they can maybe have some agency over what's going on in the schools, which of course might increase or even sustain their engagement in schools. So
You weren't here when we did Arbor, right? We had a pretty big party, taste testing at the GMS multipurpose room. I think there was like 100 people in there,
Yeah,
community
students,
members,
parents.
and I mean something like that. I think is what you're referring to. But I really like the idea of that too, because you're right. I mean, when this topic comes up of the food quality, I mean, people engaged with that.
This is like tangible.
Yeah.
So I just pulled that slide back up. You probably did food testing after the award. So you can't do it as part of the process, but it can be part of the RFP, which is super important because you want the kids to try the food and give them the thumbs up, student voice.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to make sure the board understands we're not bringing this back to you at the next board meeting for a vote. This really, you know, this is a Chris needing direction from the board. So I take the nature of the questions and discussion as support in moving forward with the waiver. Do we understand correctly? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, next are topics for future agenda items.
Nope. Yep. Whoops. Hold on, computer crisis. Okay. Yep. At our next board meeting, we have 2 presentations that we'll be bringing to you. Amy Gluck, sitting to my left at the moment, will be coming with a standardized testing presentation, so we're looking forward to that. And also, Adam Halprin will do a construction timeline update presentation. So kind of going back over some of the decisions that the board has already made about our facilities and you know what construction looks like moving forward. Those agreements we've made. Correct, Mr. Halprin? Yep. And then we'll bring the resolution actions for the next board meeting. So that's what I have on the 16th. But of course, excuse me, we'll start the meeting with a finance committee meeting at 5:30. So 5:30 is finance committee meeting and 6:30 is the board meeting. Board members, you're not all on the finance committee committee, but certainly you're all invited to attend that meeting on the 16th. Yep, exactly. So.
When's the truth and taxation? I know you had it on the slide. Truth and taxation hearing.
I think it's that night, 16th.
That night is.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's all 16th?
Yeah, it's a big night.
That's not for the finance committee. That's the.
That's the
that'll
hearing.
start hearing. Yep.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. Yep. On November 16th. Okay.
2022.
Thank you. It's been a long week already. No. 5:30. Okay.
All right. Any more public comments? Nope, she shakes her head. Next, I need a motion to go into closed session, please.
Mr. Weedman, can we back up just a minute for future agenda items? Can we have, not at the next board meeting, but can we add the Community Engagement Committee policy to the next policy agenda for the next policy meeting?
Yes, absolutely. And we still don't have a new press policy. Okay, so there are 2 that'll come up when we do the next policy committee. One is community engagement, correct? And then we're also going back to the conservation resources policy that we talked about. So we'll make sure we do both of those.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
I will second the motion.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Braden?
I got 2 voices called.
Aye.
Okay, we do not plan on taking any action coming out of the closed session. We'll be just adjourning afterwards. So there's no need to stick around unless you really want to.